Why did Bill Gates go from being America's favorite tech genius to one of the most despised figures on Earth? The answer might surprise you. It starts with his mother and ends with Jeffrey Epstein. Everyone knows the story.
I'm somebody who devoted my life to creating a software company.
Harvard Dropout builds world's biggest software empire, but that's the fairy tale version. After months of investigation, I discovered a different story. Stolen technologies, ruthless business tactics, and a crucial meeting arranged by Mummy that changed computing forever. And wait until you hear what really made him step down from Microsoft. To understand Bill Gates, we need to look at his family tree. His great-grandfather, J.W. Maxwell, founded First National Bank in Seattle, setting the stage for a legacy of influence. Bill's grandfather, James Willard Maxwell, was a prominent banker, serving as president of Seattle's National City Bank and a director of the Federal Reserve. This financial prowess continued with Bill's parents. His mother, Mary Maxwell Gates, was deeply involved with United Way, one of the world's largest non-profit fundraising organizations. Bill's father, William Gates Sr., was even more influential, a prominent attorney, trusted advisor to business and political leaders, and an acclaimed philanthropist among the likes of George Soros and the Rockefellers. Mary met Bill Sr. at university, and they married in 1951. They had 3 children, with Bill III, nicknamed Trey, born in 1955. Young Bill had an extremely close relationship with his mother, often accompanying her to volunteer lectures. His precociousness was evident early on, as he read the entire World Book Encyclopedia from A to Z. Bill's curiosity was insatiable, and his parents nurtured this thirst for knowledge. But the Gates family wasn't just about learning. They were fiercely competitive. Young Bill thrived on this, constantly testing himself in both outdoor activities and indoor games. His favorite board games were Risk, in which the objective is world domination, and Monopoly, where being in the right place at the right time can make you rich. Every summer, the Gates clan would retreat to their place on Hood Canal, nicknamed Cheerio. This wasn't your typical family vacation. Bill, his younger sister Libby, and other family members and friends would stage their own mini-Olympics.
If you stayed overnight and had a couple of days with them, you would come away exhausted from games and activity. It was a very lively scene. It was definitely competitive, there's no question about it, and the children were all part of that. There was never a dull moment.
Bill was not the most sociable kid at school. Classmates described him as intense and sometimes abrasive, struggling to fit into his age group's conventional social circles. But where he lacked social grace, he more than made up for it in sheer intellectual power. Bill's parents believed in public education, but they saw Lakeside, Seattle's top private prep school, as the place where Bill could really thrive. And boy, did he. At Lakeside, Bill found his groove, making friends and diving into tough academic challenges. Now, here's where things get interesting. It's 1969, Bill's starting high school, and the US space program is hitting its peak. Apollo 11 just landed on the moon, thanks in part to these massive, crazy expensive computers. Most schools couldn't even dream of having one, but Lakeside, they pulled off something wild. It was pretty basic by today's standards, but to Bill, it was like discovering a new world. He was hooked, spending every spare moment in that computer room.
The story has often been told, and it's completely true, that he would get up at night and leave and go over to work on the computer and come back, and we wouldn't know that he'd been gone.
As I recall, the headmaster here was asked at a parents' meeting once, "Do you have a drug problem here at the school?" And his response was, "No, I don't think we have a drug problem, but we do have a number of students that are hooked on computers."
Bill wasn't the only computer junkie at Lakeside. He met an upperclassman named Paul Allen, who shared his obsession. Paul was older, bigger, and the quiet, thoughtful type. Bill could be loud and in your face. Who'd have thought that this mismatched pair of computer geeks would end up changing everything.
They bonded by writing software code together, and somewhat competitive, Paul Allen and Bill Gates. They every now and then would have fights. At one point, Paul Allen kicked Bill Gates, who was a little bit younger, off of the little group they had as writing software, but then he realized that he needed Gates back. He couldn't do it without him, and Gates said, well, I'm happy to come back, but this time I'm going to be in charge.
In 1970, 15-year-old Bill and his buddy Paul started a business together and created this program called Data. It's all about measuring traffic flow in Seattle. They ended up making $20,000 from it. Now, Bill's family had money, sure, but he was dead set on building his own fortune his own way.
The father of one of Bill's boyhood friends said Bill always had a nose for the dollar. Even as a kid, he knew the value of a contract and even had a contract to use his older sister's baseball mitt that was signed in the legal document.
Bill wraps up at Lakeside in '73, and his folks are over the moon when Harvard comes calling. But Bill's path was already set. Computers had him hooked. So, fall '73 rolls around and Bill's off to Harvard. Freshman year, he toys with the idea of law school for a hot minute, but let's be real, nothing got his gears turning like computers. This guy was running on overdrive. Between classes and practically living at the Harvard Computer Center, Bill was going non-stop. He even dozed off during a test once.
He was always very focused on whatever it was that he was doing. He could come into his room, not get undressed, just kind of lie down on his bed, which of course would be not made because he had never had time for that, and just fall asleep. Door open, fully clothed, lie down, sleep, and then when he's refreshed, boom, back up at it and whatever the next thing was.
Bill took a breather at Harvard to make some friends that stuck around, but he wasn't exactly focused on his social calendar. Dating? Yeah, he gave it a shot now and then, but let's say the results were mixed.
I interviewed several women who had dated Bill just briefly, and one told me the very first question Bill asked her was, "What did you score on your SAT test?" This is not exactly, what a young woman wants to hear. For Bill Gates, though, he had scored a perfect 800 on his math portion of the SAT, and this was a matter of pride with him, and he wanted to make sure whoever he was dating, had scored a pretty high grade.
After the modest success of Data, Bill Gates and Paul Allen knew they were on the brink of something bigger. The boys learned how to develop, market, and manage a software product, and their knowledge was invaluable. However, they needed the right opportunity to propel them from enthusiastic amateurs to serious entrepreneurs. Paul moves to Boston from Seattle for work in December '74. One day, he's in Harvard Square and grabs a magazine. The cover of Popular Electronics is shouting about this new thing, the Altair 8800, the world's first mini computer kit. Paul's mind is blown. He races to show Bill, and boom, they both knew right then and there personal computers were about to change everything. The Altair 8800 was the world's first commercially successful personal computer, developed by Micro Instrumentation and Telemetry Systems, MITS, a small company in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Ed Roberts, who ran the company, needed software for his new mini-computers. Gates and Allen seized the opportunity, convincing Ed they were the right team for the job. Seeing the potential, Allen suggested they write a version of BASIC. This programming language would allow hobbyists and developers to create software for the Altair. At the time, BASIC was primarily used on large mainframe computers, but Gates and Allen believed it could be adapted for this new, smaller machine. The challenge was enormous. Neither had access to an Altair 8800, and they had to write the software on a different machine entirely, hoping it would work when they finally got access to the Altair. Undeterred, Gates and Allen worked tirelessly, coding in marathon sessions on a Harvard computer. In February of 1975, Paul Allen went to Albuquerque to test the program when he loaded the Altair with what Bill Gates called the coolest code I ever wrote. Astonishingly, it worked. Ed Roberts was impressed, and he agreed to license the software from Gates and Allen, who soon moved to Albuquerque to be closer to MITS and the burgeoning personal computer industry. Nobody knew it then, but that moment would have a historic impact on the personal computer industry.
I don't think we appreciated the significance of the Albuquerque thing when it first happened, but it didn't take long to realize that they were at the threshold of something that could be quite significant.
For 19-year-old Bill Gates, life would never be the same. This success marked the formal beginning of Microsoft, though the company didn't yet have its iconic name. Initially, the duo considered names that reflected their version of microcomputer software. Microsoft was Alan's suggestion, a combination of microcomputer and software. Bill got so wrapped up in Ed Roberts' company that he bailed on Harvard right before his senior year. He packed up and moved to Albuquerque. His mum was deeply disappointed.
We told him that we'd put some money aside for him to attend school, and if he didn't finish in a few years, we'd have to make some other use of those funds. And by that time, he allowed us out. That would be okay. He'd probably be able to afford to go back if and when the time came.
Bill and Ed Roberts were always butting heads. Ed thought Bill was a spoiled brat, and they argued about pretty much everything.
Ed Roberts was a massive man, something like 6'6", weighed 300 pounds. Here Bill Gates was. I mean, he formed Microsoft at age 19, and he looked like he was 13 years old. He was standing up to this bear of a man, going face to face with him and screaming and shouting matches.
It all came to a head in May 1977 when Roberts sold his business. Bill had to sue to keep the software he and Paul made. Bill won. And soon, he wasn't just the tech whiz anymore. He started playing salesman too.
We always design with the future in mind. Our research people are always tracking the latest in hardware and software technology.
It was Bill Gates who was actually the real marketing genius behind Microsoft. Early on, he was the one who was actually going out on the road and trying to sell this company and its software. And oftentimes, he would take his mother with him on these trips.
Bill's highly respected and well-connected mother would come to play a pivotal role in Microsoft's future.
Mary served on a number of corporate boards as well as the University of Washington. She was on the National Board of United Way. Also on the National Board of United Way was the CEO of IBM, which is how her son met the CEO of IBM, through her.
So, 1977 rolls around and Apple drops the Apple II, the world's first ready-to-go personal computer. The PC market explodes, hitting $1 billion in just 3 years. IBM, the big dog in computers, takes notice and wants in. Here's where things get wild. Bill's mom, Mary, is on the United Way board with some IBM hotshots. She sets up a meeting between IBM and her son Bill to talk about an operating system for their new PC. But Microsoft didn't have an operating system, so Bill sends IBM to Gary Kittle, who made CP/M, the first microcomputer operating system. Kittle's company, Digital Research, was big. Bill tells Kittle that some important people are coming, but can't say it's IBM due to an NDA. Now, the story goes that when IBM showed up, Kittle was out flying his plane. His wife, Dorothy, running things, wouldn't sign IBM's NDA, and the deal fell through as a result. Bill Gates told reporters that Gary blew off the IBM meeting to go flying. This story's become something of a legend in the history of computing, but the real details? Nobody's sure. What we do know is that talks between IBM and the Kittles hit a wall. Kittle wanted too much control, and there were IP issues. Word is, IBM offered Kittle a $250,000 flat fee plus $50 per computer for CP/M. They also wanted a custom version just for IBM. Kittle wasn't having it, thinking CP/M was worth more. IBM got fed up with the Kittles back and forth. They knew they were losing time in the PC market, so they went back to Bill Gates, asking if Microsoft could make an operating software for the IBM PC. Gates and Allen saw their shot. Allen and Gates took the plunge and met with IBM. The room was packed with IBM executives and engineers facing off against Gates and his Microsoft team. Bill, just 25 and brash as ever, sat across from the imposing IBM reps. This was the computer giants, the company that had once ruled the industry. The stakes were sky high. Little did they know this meeting would shape the future of computing. Now, Gates plays it smart. He agrees to stuff that Kittle turned down. First, he'll make a special version of MS-DOS just for IBM's PC. Second, no per-copy royalty. IBM's thinking they'll request a larger upfront payment or a royalty fee for each copy sold. Gates came in requesting a crucial clause in the contract that would go down in computing law as one of the most iconic moments in the industry's history. Microsoft wanted to license MS-DOS to other computer makers, not just IBM. The IBM lawyers probably thought, what other companies? IBM was the only big player in PCs at the time. This was a game changer. Usually companies sold their software outright, but Microsoft kept ownership while letting others use and sell it. It was a whole new way of doing business in tech. What makes this story even more interesting is that Microsoft didn't have its own operating system at the time. Bill Gates acquired the rights to Seattle computer product 86DOS for $50,000, adapted it to meet IBM's needs, and renamed it MS-DOS. The operating system became widely adopted, and the deal shifted the balance of power in the tech industry from hardware to software. As Microsoft's fortunes soared, IBM's declined. By 1993, Microsoft surpassed IBM in market value, all as a result of a single meeting in 1980. The deal offers valuable lessons, and history remembers the winners, while the losers often fade into obscurity. Some speculate that if Kittle had met with IBM and signed the non-disclosure agreement, CP/M might have become the industry standard instead of MS-DOS, potentially altering the course of personal computing history. Kittle struggled to keep his company afloat and was unable to replicate the success of CP/M. The story affected his personal life, leading to bitterness, divorce, depression, and alcoholism. Tragically, Kittle died in 1994 at the age of 52 due to head injuries suffered at a biker bar. Recent efforts have sought to recognize Kittle as a pioneer in the industry, and the man who could have been Bill Gates. As is often the case in the tech industry, the prize went not to the inventor, but to the one who exploited the invention. Bill Gates and Paul Allen's successful partnership took a turn as Microsoft grew, leading to disagreements over hiring practices and products. Gates became distant and untouchable, and when Allen was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma in 1982, Gates allegedly saw it as an opportunity to take further control of the company. Allen even claimed Gates was scheming to rip him off by liquidating his shares, but this never happened. Allen left his position as vice chairman but retained co-ownership and a board seat. Gates was also accused of being a tyrant, frequently berating his employees and their proposals during meetings, compelling them to defend their ideas until he was satisfied with their explanations. Despite this, Gates' ruthless behavior drove the company forward. At 31, he became the youngest billionaire in history. The launch of Windows 95 was a major event in tech history, and it set new standards for operating systems with features like Start Menu and Taskbar. However, it wasn't long before the Federal Trade Commission started investigating allegations that Gates was exploiting Microsoft's market dominance to stifle competition by lowering prices on Microsoft products. The company's once unassuming chairman had seemingly adopted a more aggressive seek and destroy approach to business.
They made computer manufacturers pay for the Microsoft software, whether it was installed on their computer or not. And as a result of that, they prevented competitors from entering the market.
The Justice Department has charged Microsoft, the world's largest software company, with using unfair marketing and contracting practices.
In July 1994, Microsoft reached an agreement with the Justice Department to cease charging the disputed fees, leading to the case being dropped. Microsoft's stock value took a hit due to government investigations and conflicts with IBM and Apple, putting increased pressure on the company to release the next version of Windows. To alleviate the tension, Gates employed creative methods. He appeared in commercials alongside Microsoft's top executive, Steve Ballmer, promoting the company's future endeavors. Gates also made dramatic entrances at software conventions, once even dressed as Star Trek's Mr. Spock to showcase Microsoft's offerings. In addition, he introduced the microgames, a diverse set of competitions for Microsoft employees, reminiscent of the games he enjoyed as a child at Hood Canal.
It was like summer camp for adults. We'd all go to his house, and he would spend months figuring out what the various games would be, and he would be sort of the master of ceremonies. He'd form us into teams, very carefully figuring out the dynamics of the teams and how we might all interact. And then we would have to do these like summer camp games. And I met Melinda first at one of those micro games.
Melinda French, a 28-year-old Duke graduate with an MBA, had been working as an executive at Microsoft for several years. It was becoming increasingly apparent to Bill's family and friends that the 37-year-old Gates had chosen her as the woman he wanted to marry.
He dated Melinda for quite a while before they got married, and so I saw them together over the years, and they always looked like they had a very special thing going, you know, a level of intimacy and a level of intellectual connection that just caused sparks.
She's a really wonderful person, a perfect match for him. Very, very bright, very organized, very supportive, very interested in family and good family life.
Bill and Melinda Gates engaged in the spring of 1993. The pair had 3 children. At first, people who worked with Gates said it was well understood that the Microsoft co-founder, consumed by his company, had not factored marriage or children into his life. His years as a young man who liked to party and go to strip clubs were known among those in the still small tech community of the 1980s. Hard Drive, a 1992 biography by 2 investigative reporters, claims he once flew by helicopter to a chalet in the French Alps for an international sales meeting, where they partied all night. At 5 a.m., as one of the attendees was leaving, he almost stepped on Gates, lying on top of a woman. Before his marriage, Gates was often besieged by women who wanted to date him. A person familiar with Gates's interactions with women said that until he married, some women were hoping to catch their boss's eye. Some wore "Marry Me Bill" t-shirts to office events. Well into his marriage, it is said that it was not unusual for Gates to flirt with women and pursue them, such as asking a Microsoft employee out to dinner while still the company's chairman.
The Justice Department has charged Microsoft with engaging in anti-competitive and exclusionary practices designed to maintain its monopoly.
Microsoft in secret basically finished up 95 and released it, and then provided no documentation.
Forcing Microsoft to include Netscape's competing software in our operating system is like requiring Coca-Cola to include 3 cans of Pepsi in every 6-pack it sells.
Do you agree that Internet Explorer is defined here correctly as Microsoft's web browser?
Gates was shameless in both personal and business life. As Microsoft grew, Bill Gates continued on his aggressive business tactics, often employing strategies to outmaneuver competitors. A prime example was Microsoft's decision in the late 1990s to bundle Internet Explorer with Windows, making it the default browser, effectively sidelining rivals like Netscape Navigator. In 1995, Bill Gates became the richest person in the world, with a net worth of over $12 billion. At his peak in 1999, his net worth was estimated at over $100 billion. Many internet websites have depicted Bill Gates as a bully, with his company controlling 95% of the world's PC operating systems. In May 1998, the US Department of Justice and 20 states filed an antitrust lawsuit against Microsoft. The legal complexities of this case were expected to take years to resolve, and the ongoing investigation had already taken a significant toll on the young chairman of Microsoft.
Your picture has been on the cover of virtually every major news magazine. You're written up in all the papers, and for years and years it was Bill Gates, the boy wonder, the man America loves to admire, the man everybody wants to be. Now all your press is Bill Gates, the man everybody hates, everyone wants to gang up on. What happened?
Making people use Internet Explorer on your Windows operating system, which you created and popularized on personal computers, is not a crime. You were simply being a smart businessman, not doing anything illegal per se. However, the problem was that even though your actions were not illegal, they didn't look good in the public eye. You appeared to be a greedy capitalist trying to squash competition, despite already being a billionaire. This narrative of you being an evil person was easy to spin, quickly making you the most hated man in America. In America, if the masses hate you enough, they will eventually find a way to tear you down, regardless of whether you actually committed a crime. This is because if the public hatred towards you is strong enough, it only takes one ambitious politician, judge, or bureaucrat who wants to move up the ladder to dedicate their entire existence to bringing you down. They can capitalize on this by claiming credit for your downfall and using it to further their own careers. This is the danger of being hated in America. During the investigation, even though Bill was exercising his right to plead the Fifth, it only fueled the public's hatred towards him even more.
Have you communicated to people within Microsoft, other than Mr. Moritz, that browser share was a very, very important goal, using those words?
I don't remember using those words.
Have you communicated the substance of that to people within Microsoft?
Help me understand. If you communicate to people that something is important, is the substance of that identical to communicating to them it's very, very important?
Would it be, in your view, Mr. Gates, if you were using those terms, would important be the same as very, very important?
Not identical.
What would be the difference?
The two varies.
And what significance in terms of substance would those two varies have?
A speaker's tendency towards hyperbole.
In a way, his situation was the opposite of O.J. Simpson's. While O.J. was guilty but managed to win public sympathy and avoid conviction, Bill was innocent but so disliked by the public that they wanted to see him taken down a peg. His wealth and perceived greed made him an unsympathetic figure, and people were eager to see him face consequences, even if he hadn't actually committed a crime. It was a wake-up call. A moment when you realized that if you didn't take drastic action to improve your image, you could end up in serious trouble, perhaps even facing prison time. The question was, how could you transform yourself from a selfish capitalist billionaire into a generous, likable figure seen as a force for good in the world? The answer came down to one word: charity. Bill Gates figured out that charity isn't just about giving money away, it's about image. When he stepped down as Microsoft CEO during the antitrust battle, he said that it was to focus on his foundation. Smart move. Gates has donated over $50 billion since the 90s. Sounds huge, but less than half his net worth. Still, other billionaires like Buffett, Musk, and Bezos followed suit. But Gates was smarter about it. He didn't just donate to random charities, he gave strategically, including over $250 million to media companies like NPR and BBC. Suddenly, these outlets were doing a lot of positive reporting on Gates and his foundation. Gates also got to choose what topics his media donations covered, often health and education, areas his foundation focuses on. This gave his projects even more publicity. While other billionaires just donate and hope people notice, Gates found a way to make sure everyone knows how generous he is. It's not just about giving money, it's about controlling the narrative. The Gates Foundation are throwing so much money at the World Health Organization that they're basically calling the shots on global health stuff. And here's the kicker. Even though Gates is giving away tons of cash, his personal piggy bank has more than doubled since the 90s. How does that even work?
A COVID-19 vaccine will likely be ready by early next year. In fact, we'll probably have more than one vaccine ready. I'm confident that the world will build a plan to eliminate COVID-19, saving millions of lives and getting on a path to global recovery.
When the COVID-19 pandemic hit, Bill Gates' name seemed to dominate news coverage. This wasn't mere coincidence. Despite lacking medical or scientific credentials, Gates was sought after for his opinions by some of the most respected scientific journals. One of his main advocacies was making vaccines accessible to everyone. However, a contradiction emerged between his public stance and the Gates Foundation's actions. While Gates publicly urged governments and businesses to share vaccines for global safety, and the Gates Foundation claimed to deliver vaccines to underdeveloped countries, behind the scenes, the foundation was reportedly working against waiving patents on COVID-19 vaccines. The controversy deepened when it all came to light that the Gates Foundation had investments in companies developing COVID-19 vaccines. This apparent conflict of interest raised ethical questions, especially given Gates' initial denial of any financial stake in these companies. The foundation's tax forms, publicly available on their website, seemed to contradict the official narrative by showing investments in pharmaceutical companies involved in vaccine development. Now, besides the good PR and the various activities billionaires like Bill Gates engage in, there are other practical benefits to having a charitable foundation. It's a financial tool that offers significant advantages to the ultra-wealthy. With a charitable foundation, you're only legally required to donate 5% of your money every year. This means you can park a substantial portion of your wealth in your own private foundation where it won't be taxed. You can then invest your foundation's money into things like the stock market. As long as you're able to earn over 5% a year, you're going to break even or even grow your wealth. Or rather, your foundation's wealth. Then there are donor-advised funds, DAFs, which Silicon Valley types are particularly fond of.
Donor-advised funds are kind of like checking accounts for charities. So you put money in, you get an immediate tax write-off for the full amount, then you donate the money to an actual charity later, often much later, because the money is allowed to sit in the fund indefinitely.
You can donate a DAF, snag that sweet tax break, but not actually give the money to a charity for years. No wonder DAF donations have almost tripled since 2007. Now, a rich guy supporting a tax loophole, not shocking. But it's part of big philanthropy's sneaky benefit, reputation cleansing. Now, rich folks using charity to shape their legacy isn't new. It's been a thing since the Gilded Age, when modern philanthropy kicked off. People back then were worried that big philanthropy would give the wealthy too much power over society. Sound familiar? It all goes back to Andrew Carnegie, America's richest dude at the time. He wrote this game-changing essay, The Gospel of Wealth. Carnegie said that the rich had to help the poor. Good, right? But he also claims that they should use their superior wisdom to help the poor better than the poor could help themselves. Get what he's saying? Rich people are smarter than us regular folks, so they should save us and shape the world as they see fit. And some people still buy into that today. In 1 year, independent of any actual donations, the value of the foundation's assets rose by nearly $10.5 billion. That's 2 times Donald Trump's total net worth. The foundation makes far more money than it gives away, and all that income is tax-free. Gates defenders would say it's a smart billionaire's move. The other camp would call it a scam, one of the biggest scams in the world. Bill Gates has done some good stuff, no doubt. Fighting malaria, reducing child deaths, that's legit. But when it comes to his work back home, especially in education, it's a whole different story. Check out what went down in Washington state with charter schools. Gates loves them, but voters, not so much. They shot down charter school bills 3 times. But in 2012, Gates and his rich buddies got it on the ballot again. When the state Supreme Court said it was unconstitutional, Gates just funded a group to help lawmakers work around that decision. One guy basically steamrolled hundreds of thousands of voters and the highest court in the state. Bill knows he's got this power. Just watch how he responds when asked if he'd run for president.
But I did decide that the philanthropic world was where my contribution would be more unique. I can have as much impact in that role as I could in any political role. I don't have to raise political campaigns. I don't have to try and get elected. I'm not term limited to 8 years. It's a very nice office that I've got right now.
He's thinking, president? Nah, that's just a short-term gig. I've got bigger plans. As of 2021, Bill Gates has somehow become America's biggest farmland owner. We're talking over 269,000 acres. He's been snatching up land all over the place, but he's been doing it on the down low, using a bunch of shell companies through some investment group called Cascade Investment LLC. He was buying all this land during the COVID recession, when everyone else was stuck at home and the economy was in the toilet. Gates swoops in and buys up all this cheap land. Nobody even knew it was him until some nosy researchers started digging into this mystery investor, dropping $171 million on land in Louisiana. Why all the secrecy? Well, imagine the headlines if people found out the guy pushing for lockdowns was also profiting from them. However, once he was exposed, he would quickly go for the narrative that agriculture was merely a good investment. But think about it. Being the biggest landowner in America, that's some serious power. Gates gets to call the shots on what's grown, how much, who works there, the whole 9 yards. But Gates snatching up farmland isn't exactly breaking news. He's been at it for years, gobbling up fields all over America since way back in 2011. This was also the time frame when Gates's influence grew and his connections became increasingly powerful. During this period, Gates had numerous meetings with a notorious figure. Let's just call him J.E., as we're not allowed to say his full name, often at J.E.'s properties. While Gates claimed these meetings were to discuss global health and charitable opportunities, they occurred well after J.E.'s 2008 conviction for soliciting prostitution from minors. The relationship with J.E. would prove to be a pivotal factor in Gates's personal life. In 2019, when Gates's connections with J.E. became public, his wife Melinda reportedly hired divorce attorneys. Allegations surfaced that Gates often visited J.E. as a means to get away from Melinda, highlighting the strain on their marriage. Gates's lack of transparency regarding his association with J.E. only fueled speculation. When questioned about J.E.'s background in a PBS interview, Gates deflected, stating,
"There's absolutely nothing new on that. Well, he's dead, so, in general, you always have to be careful."
As these controversies unfolded, other secrets began to surface. In 2019, a woman informed Microsoft's board about a past affair with Gates, triggering an internal investigation. The following year, Gates stepped down from the Microsoft board, though his representatives claimed the departure was unrelated to the investigation. In 2021, reports emerged of an alleged extramarital affair between Gates and Mila Anatova, a Russian bridge player he'd met around 2010. The situation took a sinister turn when it was reported that J.E. had apparently attempted to use knowledge of this affair to threaten Gates. These revelations culminated in Melinda announcing their divorce, citing multiple factors that had made their relationship unhealthy. When questioned about Gates's continued association with J.E., Melinda pointedly remarked, "Those are questions for Bill to answer," confirming that J.E.'s relationship with her ex-husband had contributed to their split. While Bill and Melinda initially maintained a professional relationship to guide their foundation, Melinda eventually severed all ties, receiving an additional $12.5 billion to pursue her own philanthropic mission. This sequence of events not only exposed the complex web of relationships surrounding Gates, but also highlighted the often blurred lines between power, influence, and personal conduct in the world of high-profile philanthropy. As we reflect on Gates's life, we're left with a portrait of a man driven by an unrelenting desire to win, to shape the world according to his vision. The boy who once sought to dominate board games now plays a real-world game, where the stakes involve global health, education, and even what we eat. In the end, Bill Gates' legacy is one of contradiction. A brilliant mind that revolutionized personal computing, yet also stifled innovation through monopolistic practices. A generous philanthropist who's given away billions, yet seen his own wealth continue to grow. A man who claims to want to save the world, yet whose methods often raise questions of transparency and self-interest. In our adoration of tech billionaires and their world-changing ambitions, have we created modern-day aristocrats with unprecedented power to shape our lives? The answers, like Gates himself, are complex and multifaceted. But one thing is certain: the impact of that competitive child from Seattle will be felt for generations to come, for better or for worse. As we close the chapter on Bill Gates, another enigmatic billionaire steps into the spotlight, one equally filled with ambition, contradiction, and a relentless drive to shape, or perhaps control, humanity's future. This is an Elon Musk like you've never seen him before. Just click right over here, and I hope to see you there soon. Thanks for watching.